you some questions about some of this new information that's come out, the Nancy Guthrie investigation, and some of the information that I've learned from some of the profilers that I talked to. And I wanted to see, like, as an agent, how you would put that into action actually with the investigation. But the first thing I wanted to ask you about is this new information coming from Brianna Whitney, who's a reporter with the CBS station in Phoenix. And that's one of the stations that received the first two ransom letters, the ones that we believe Savannah was referencing when she said that she thought two were real. And they're now divulging, the station, that when they looked back into the Bitcoin wallet, there was activity on February 10th, and there's been no activity since. So this would have been a couple of months ago, right when the letters first came out. And a small amount of money was put into the account, along with a note that said, "We are ready to talk, contact us." And then there was a link for how to reach out to them. And there's no way to know for sure that that was the FBI or Savannah Guthrie, but it seems like it would kind of make sense. What do you think it means that they put that note in there, but it seems there was no response?
Well, I don't think we know that there was no response. There was no response that was visible to us. But I think that what that is the FBI saying, if it was the FBI, which makes sense, it's them saying, "Hey, we're in a negotiation here. This is not something where we're going to play the game where you just dictate terms to us, because it's that whole thing. Well, this is your only mother. You want her back, so you better meet our terms." And they would say, "We're your only victims, so if you don't get money from us, you don't get a dime." So we're both in this, a zero-sum end game. I mean, this is big. And so there is wiggle room in negotiations. I can guarantee you, not every negotiation, but it really depends on how you do the negotiation. If you start, I know this sounds horrible, but it's like negotiating on a house or a car price, where if you come in and seem desperate, they will not budge. If they come in and seem truly, yes, we desperately want her back, but we're not going to set a precedent for future crimes, things like this, then you're forcing them into a negotiation. So I think what the FBI was telling them is, this is not you make a demand, we fulfill the demand. This is a negotiation, and this is going to be how it works.
That conversation began on day 79 with Brian Entin, and now, 8 days later, the investigation has taken a sharp turn. Since our last update, forensic evidence has pushed the search into new territory, connecting fragments of the case that were previously isolated. Those of you following since day one understand the foundation, but the complexity of these new forensic links is unprecedented here. New viewers should reference our previous deep dives for the full history of the crime scene and the initial evidence recovered. We are now analyzing the current status of the investigation, focusing on the tactical details of Nancy's final known movements that night. The timeline is precise. Nancy was last seen being dropped off at her residence in the Catalina foothills of Tucson, Arizona. It was approximately 9:50 p.m. on January 31st when she arrived home, marking the start of a fatal countdown. She missed a scheduled church live stream the next morning, prompting concerned family members to arrive at her home at 11 a.m. After finding no trace of her, they placed a 911 call at noon, and the responding officers discovered a haunting scene. Nancy had not fled. Her phone and essential medication were left behind, indicating she did not leave her home voluntarily that night. Her shoes remained in the house while the back doors stood wide open, and a disturbing discovery waited on the front porch. Forensics confirmed Nancy's blood was on the porch. The doorbell camera was cut at 1:47 a.m., followed by motion at 2:12. Motion was detected without footage. At 2:28 a.m., her pacemaker stopped syncing with her Apple devices. The violent events occurred within a 41-minute window between 1:47 and 2:28 a.m., executed by a prepared adversary. This was a calculated strike. If you are tracking this investigation with us, ensure you are subscribed to receive every forensic update. American Case File. We are reconstructing the final hours before Nancy Guthrie's life was permanently changed. This active investigation is developing rapidly. Subscribe now to stay informed on every tactical breakthrough as we follow the evidence. The next phase began quickly. Within days of Nancy vanishing, high-stakes ransom notes started appearing. No police contact, no private secure line, and no direct family delivery. Instead, they targeted television networks. TMZ and two Tucson news outlets were hit with demands for millions in Bitcoin. Deadlines were set for February 5th and February 9th, but both passed without a single payment. No further words came from the kidnappers, yet on February 4th, Derek Colella sent two cryptic messages to the Guthrie family asking about the Bitcoin. He was promptly arrested when his hoax surfaced. Colella admitted he was just a spectator watching the news who scraped the family data online. He had zero connection to the kidnapping, and his federal trial is set for June 23rd in Tucson. This fraudulent hoax was separate from the formal ransom letters sent to those television news desks. Savannah Guthrie herself publicly noted that certain letters appeared significantly different from the others involved. She believed two notes were authentic, which leads us directly to February 10th, the turning point. A Phoenix CBS station confirmed that a specific Bitcoin wallet showed sudden, suspicious activity. One small transaction appeared, carrying a blunt message: "We are ready to talk, send us a contact link." Official sources never identified who sent that crypto message, but looking at FBI protocols, it is clear this wasn't a transfer of funds. It was a calculated signal sent into the dark of this investigation. To decode that signal, you must hear from an insider who has navigated these high-pressure negotiations. Are you surprised the FBI or the family haven't tried reaching out again?
In terms of the FBI or the Guthries?
I'm not, but again, I don't know what they know. Maybe I would be surprised. And in the FBI, in the same case, there's going to be a case agent, there's going to be a supervisor, there's going to be the supervisor's boss, the assistant special agent in charge, and then it goes all the way to the president in this case. So there could be, it would be astounding to me if there wasn't disagreement within them, within the team, on what the best strategy is going forward. And I've never been in a situation where there wasn't. Somebody saying they sound crazy, just pay them. What have we got to lose? Well, we've got to lose everything on this case and the victim and a precedent set for other cases. And so both sides come with strong arguments.
How much do you think they're consulting the family in the decision of whether to reach out again?
They're going to consult them before every significant move, and a lot of insignificant moves. But they won't be in, the Guthries won't be in the squad bay or the FBI conference room when they determine what their strategy recommendations are going to be. And certainly, think of it this way. It is not this relationship, but it has some similarities to a person who is on trial and they have an attorney. That attorney is an expert in the law, and they've seen this type of case so many times. But if the defendant wants to plead guilty, you can't talk him out of it. I'm sure you could try, but ultimately the decision is going to rest with the defendant. And in the FBI, it's very clear when you're going through training and when you start working these types of cases that you are working as an adjunct to the victims. You are trying to help them. At the same time, you are trying to capture the kidnapper. And so, it comes down to what's more important, capturing the kidnapper or getting the victim back. And that's where the rub comes in, usually. I used to argue that there's no difference. If you get the victim, you get the kidnapper. If you get the kidnapper, you get the victim if they're still alive.
What Moore is outlining isn't a standard negotiation. It is a struggle for absolute control. The FB. I wasn't yielding to demands. They were forcing a dialogue to regain leverage over the captors. They sent a message, you don't set the terms here, and we both have a lot to lose. Then, total silence, no counter, no proof of life, and no further communication from the other side. That February 10th channel went dark and has stayed dark ever since, at least to the general public. This void isn't just a failure, it's a critical forensic data point that reveals the psychological profile of the targets. It tells investigators exactly what kind of people they are hunting 10 days after Nancy was reported missing. The FBI released doorbell footage of a masked male, standing roughly 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10. He carried a 25-liter Ozark trail pack, a specific Walmart-exclusive brand, while a weapon holster remained clearly visible on his waist. His movements were calculated and devoid of panic, prompting investigators to subpoena Walmart sales logs to pinpoint that specific backpack transaction. Investigators noted a glaring anomaly in the Ransom communications because true abduction scenarios typically adhere to a very specific behavioral sequence. Actual kidnappers apply relentless pressure while escalating their demands to remind the family exactly what is at stake. Their success relies on maintaining absolute emotional leverage, making every hour without a met demand feel like a crushing, unbearable weight. This case deviated from that norm since no proof of life, not a single photo or video was ever produced by the captors. No forensic or visual evidence emerged to confirm Nancy remained alive for even a moment after her forced removal from the residence. Artificial deadlines expired without incident. And when the FBI initiated contact on February 10th, the response from the other side was total silence. To a veteran FBI agent experienced in these high-stakes abductions, that specific deviation in behavior suggests a very different motive. Consider the Guthrie family perspective from their vantage point. It feels as if the entire investigation has ground to a complete halt. Internal sources confirm the lack of momentum, indicating that investigators are failing to make any significant breakthroughs in the search. They appear clueless regarding the identity of Nancy's abductor, leaving this single piece of physical evidence as their only tangible lead. If Savannah maintains that those leads are legitimate, any child would find it impossible to resist taking action to save their mother. I would be obsessed with accessing that Bitcoin account, losing sleep every night, and eventually deciding to ignore all caution. I would pour more funds into that wallet just to see what happens, desperate for any sign of life. Analysts argue this creates a major tactical disadvantage, especially if the abductor actually held Nancy and intended to negotiate her safe release. A real kidnapper would have initiated contact with the FBI directly, making these external efforts essentially useless for her recovery. If the suspects were open to negotiation, they would have responded to the initial offer, though we cannot rule out a hidden contact. The central problem is that these individuals were operating in bad faith from the start, showing zero intention of actually returning Nancy. They refused to offer proof of life, and physical evidence at the crime scene suggests they completely disregarded Nancy's physical well-being. Their every action signaled bad faith, mirroring a geopolitical standoff where the other party has no intention of ever cooperating. This is a clinical behavioral profile once you remove the distraction of the ransom notes and the complex Bitcoin wallet logistics. Looking past the calculated media strategy reveals a series of actions that never actually prioritize the collection of a cash payout. If financial gain was never the primary objective, the investigation had to face a much more disturbing and uncomfortable question. What was their true goal? Because professional ransom operations avoid publicity and never leak correspondence to local television news stations. Real captors demand money discreetly and fast to avoid police interference, Yet this case was broadcast to the media instantly. The deliberate choice to make the entire ordeal visible is perhaps the most revealing psychological tell in this entire criminal investigation. This suggests the perpetrator either lacked any fundamental understanding of kidnapping protocols or they understood them perfectly and chose total subversion. They intentionally inverted the standard playbook while a separate, more secretive operation was unfolding away from the public eye. Few have linked these facts, but over 220 emails obtained by Fox 10 reveal a much larger narrative. These documents confirm the Pima County Sheriff's Department was in constant contact during the weeks leading up to Nancy Guthrie's abduction. Law enforcement was coordinating with reality television producers to grant them full access to the department's internal daily operations. The correspondence also reveals that the commanders of both the homicide and cold case units had been suddenly reassigned. This leadership shakeup occurred just months before the kidnapping, followed by a startling Fox News report regarding the lead investigator. The primary detective assigned to the Nancy Guthrie mystery possessed zero prior experience handling homicide cases. Let that fact sink in. This was the lead official on one of the most high-profile American missing persons cases of 2026. Despite having never worked a murder, this investigator authorized the release of the crime scene before forensics had finished their sweep. For a case dependent on hair, skin cells, and microscopic DNA transfer, these critical trace materials only remain viable for hours. Such biological evidence degrades rapidly, so releasing the scene early is a catastrophic failure, not just a procedural error. That single decision could be the difference between a conviction and a permanent cold case. Once a scene is unsecured and re-entered, any physical evidence recovered later becomes a legal nightmare for the prosecution. Defense attorneys will dismantle the chain of custody, rendering the evidence contested. Definitive physical evidence is now entirely at risk of being thrown out, evidence that could have proven everything. Defense teams will attack the chain of custody, leaving once definitive evidence totally useless in court. The pressure is mounting. The Pima County Board of Supervisors just voted unanimously to interrogate Sheriff Chris Nanos regarding his leadership of the department. A recall campaign is currently active for a former FBI agent with 25 years of field experience. This transcends mere bureaucracy. This is about investigative integrity and the specific data that has been withheld from the public. He claims there is a motive behind the silence. Everyone is demanding transparency now, but the pattern is telling. A massive demographic remains deeply affected by these events and remains profoundly unsettled. Let us begin with the facts. Fox Digital recently intercepted internal emails originating from the Pima County Sheriff's Office. Records show they were coordinating with A&E. A reality television production was in development, focused on camera crews shadowing deputies across Pima County. They were granted unprecedented access to active scenes and emergency calls. The communication trail reveals a specific friction. Inside the email chains, producers were aggressively pushing for sensitive footage. They demanded body camera recordings and pressed for formal interviews with various high-ranking department officials and commanders. One official response noted that the agency had undergone several internal rotational reassignments recently. These shifts happened within the last year. Specifically, the leads for both the cold case and homicide units were suddenly transferred. They blamed scheduling conflicts. But looking back at the Nancy Guthrie tragedy, the truth is far more calculated. The sheriff had systematically purged veteran investigators from key leadership positions for purely political gain. This was a targeted removal of personnel who refused to back his re-election campaign during the last cycle. Consider the timing. This internal restructuring was surfacing in emails long before the Guthrie case even began. This paper trail existed well before the public realized what was happening to the Nancy Guthrie investigation. Correct. The production dates indicate filming occurred prior to the start of this specific homicide inquiry. Even so, the phrasing in those emails is suspicious. Citing rotational reassignments as a formal excuse feels deliberate. You have to ask why they felt the need to highlight those specific personnel changes as the primary justification. Usually, you just state the position is vacant. Professional protocol does not require that much detail. Furthermore, in my 2 decades with the FBI, I rarely saw these types of forced rotations. They exist, but typically, you remain in a specialized role until the mission is complete or you choose to leave. That stability is crucial for complex cases. Here, the sheriff seemingly weaponized transfers to silence internal dissent. The timeline is the smoking gun. They had the forensic tools and the leads ready to go months ago. If the original homicide experts were still running the show, would this victim still be alive today? Think about it. If they had surrendered that hair sample when the FBI first requested it, everything changes. The outcome would be different. When a sheriff micromanages a case to this degree, the red flags are blinding. He is personally deciding whether to cooperate with federal authorities on a single piece of forensic evidence. That level of interference is alarming. If he is blocking the FBI here, what else is he suppressing? Defenders claim he is just an administrator who cannot hurt the case. That is a dangerous misconception. He is making tactical calls that dictate the investigation's trajectory. As sheriff, I would demand immediate answers. If my team refused to utilize the FBI crime lab, we would be having a very serious meeting. I would need to know why the world's premier forensic facility was suddenly deemed inadequate by local police. This points to a toxic friction between the sheriff and federal agents. This level of obstruction is unprecedented. It is genuinely shocking for the Bureau to admit they were blocked while trying to follow standard legal protocol. Yet the sheriff insisted on a private lab 3,000 miles away. The FBI has intelligence they are withholding. Moore clarified the motive. This is not about a lack of progress, but the direction of the evidence itself. A cold case and a quiet case are entirely different beasts. Internally, the mechanics of those two scenarios are distinct. We are halfway through the analysis. The upcoming segment is where the procedural failures become lethal and complex. If you have not joined American Case File yet, subscribe now. We go far beyond the standard media cycle. Our objective is forensic depth. In this specific murder investigation, the most damning evidence never reached the headlines. One central question continues to haunt this case, dividing veteran detectives and retired criminal profilers for weeks. The core debate remains: was Nancy Guthrie abducted by a lone actor or a pair of suspects? The answer dictates the entire manhunt strategy. A single individual acting alone changes the forensic profile completely. It points to a deep familiarity with Nancy, the floor plan, and her routine, someone who could manage the hit alone. They walked in knowing exactly what to expect. That level of tactical comfort implies a direct or indirect connection. Maybe distant, maybe removed, but present. Two suspects change the math entirely, it suggests. Complex coordination and forensic planning. It signals shared motive or a contract job, but multiple players spike the risk of a fatal communication error or a careless slip where a secret reaches ears it never should have. The forensics paint a specific picture. A single glove was found 6 feet from the house, yielding viable DNA. Technicians pulled a profile for an unidentified male, but it was a dead end in the database, no hits in CODIS. Inside, mixed DNA also failed to match. Investigators bagged hair samples and moved them to the lab for processing. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente previously argued on this channel that a lone attacker was responsible for the entire abduction. He contends the blood patterns near the porch prove one person maintained total operational control throughout the violent struggle. If 2 men were there, one would have secured Nancy inside while the second cleared the exit path for extraction. Instead, blood on the porch suggests a chaotic struggle that a lone actor had to handle without any outside assistance. I understand the theory that this was a solo operation. Many believe a single person could pull this off, while others are convinced multiple people were on the scene. Was it 2 people? Or maybe 4? Where do you land on the suspect count? That assessment is accurate and hits every major point of contention in this case. It is difficult to visualize a lone individual executing this, but you cannot commit to one theory just yet. Do not lean too hard on one side. I am not trying to be vague here, but look, when the top investigators on the planet are struggling, I hesitate to criticize their tactical process from the sidelines. I will not sit here online claiming I have the answers or would have managed the scene differently. Both scenarios are plausible, but the statistics point toward a multi-person job. If you examine the history of high-profile abductions, you often see a different pattern than people expect. Many major cases involve a single perpetrator, but those lone wolf scenarios usually involve a specific target type. Typically, that target is a small child or infant. You simply cannot maintain a normal routine while holding a guest. Going to work is stressful enough without a captive trying to fight back and escape your home every second. One person cannot manage that level of intense security for long. Right now, we only have evidence for one. The surveillance footage only shows one individual out front, though that does not rule out hidden players or accomplices. The police likely have sealed evidence, unseen footprints, or forensic traces from a second person that remain strictly confidential. Could a lone attacker really overpower Nancy, move her to a vehicle, and drive away without any help? Was extracting her from the home and securing her in the car a one-man job or something more? I watched the Jim Clemente segment, and his analysis of the scene was truly compelling. Jim and I are former colleagues, and I respect his forensic insight. I just need to understand his logic. If he is convinced it was a solo act, I want to see the specific data driving that conclusion. I am not refuting him, but an absence of proof for a second suspect is not definitive proof. Seriously, what physical evidence do we actually have left? Beyond that one camera angle, what else is there? Missing a second person on video does not prove anything. That alone does not confirm a partner, but if Jim suspects a lone wolf, I take that seriously. Two elite investigators, two clashing theories. Moore's bet on a second suspect is based on cold statistical probability. He ignores instinct and emotion, focusing instead on forensic patterns established over decades of high-stakes criminal cases. He recognizes the patterns but refuses to commit. He warned against leaning too hard on thin ice for a reason. That level of tactical caution from a veteran like Moore suggests the current evidence is far from a slam dunk. The case is not leaning in one direction yet, so everything rests on the results from the crime lab. Former FBI Assistant Director John Miller brought up a different motive, suggesting the abductor targeted Nancy for specific reasons. The killer likely profiled Nancy as defenseless, an isolated target living alone who was easily overpowered and vulnerable. She was connected to wealth and power. This framing suggests the abduction was a calculated financial or strategic move. It was random yet calculated. The abductor selected her specifically because of her high-profile connections. Savannah Guthrie said it herself. During her first public interview after her mother vanished, she confessed her darkest fear. Her mother was likely a target. She was hunted because of the Guthrie name. Then she uttered a sentence that has stayed in this forensic investigation since day one. She said, "It is too much to bear." Thinking that I brought this to her bedside. That this happened because of me. That quote is not hard evidence, yet it reflects the motive investigators have been quietly exploring, the high-stakes theory that this crime was never about Nancy Guthrie. She was merely the path to another person, and that person was her daughter, Savannah. While theories regarding motive and suspects evolved, detectives were focused on something far more objective than mere human speculation. They relied on physical evidence. Crime scene technicians recovered a hair sample from the home and shipped it to a Florida lab. A private forensics laboratory in Florida took the lead. The Pima County Sheriff Department confirmed the Florida lab results were critical. Lab techs transferred that material to the FBI for deep analysis. That original hair sample was part of the handoff. An FBI official confirmed to reporters that the Bureau requested the physical material over 2 months ago. The clock was ticking. What happened next pushed this case into territory few investigations ever reach. A specialized forensics lab in San Francisco stepped in. This laboratory identified Rex Hoyerman. He is the killer who pled guilty to murdering 8 women on Long Island. The infamous Gilgo Beach serial killer case used this facility. Now, they are reportedly analyzing DNA connected to Nancy Guthrie. DNA analysis in the Guthrie case is no routine referral. It is a massive signal from federal investigators. That lab avoids standard cases. They specialize where conventional DNA testing hits a wall, and investigators require elite forensic tools. Detectives must utilize forensic genetic genealogy. They need partial match analysis and advanced techniques to break the case wide open. These experts build family trees from microscopic biological material. They trace identity through relatives when a direct database hit fails. CODIS database hits are non-existent. Bringing this level of testing into a missing persons case means one of two things. Either the crime scene DNA was insufficient for a standard match, or the complexity of the sample required advanced testing. Alternatively, investigators already have a lead. They are simply using this DNA to confirm their suspicions before they move in. Every possibility points toward the same conclusion. They are not guessing anymore. They are building a real case. Officials state these results could take months. DNA at this high level of analysis never provides a name quickly or easily. It provides a direction. Then you follow that lead methodically in a way that will eventually hold up in court. Precision is required for the courtroom, because a courtroom is exactly where the FBI says this criminal case is headed. Since Nancy Guthrie vanished, public communication from the sheriff has been measured. It is tightly controlled for a reason. At times, it felt like the investigation stalled. There were no press conferences, no fresh leads, and zero named suspects. No answers surfaced for 87 days. But there is a vital distinction that often gets lost in the media noise. This is the most important distinction in the story. There is a massive difference between a quiet case and a cold case. An investigation that has gone quiet is not an investigation that has gone cold. One means there is nothing left. The other means there is a secret to protect. The FBI public posture and their refusal to name suspects are tactical. Silence regarding specific evidence does not reflect absence. It reflects preparation. Because everything they collect must survive. Evidence must survive heavy scrutiny. Every fragment has to be handled in a way that a defense attorney cannot challenge. Every lead must be followed. Detectives must leave a clean, documented paper trail. And none of that painstaking work is public. That work is never announced. It is preserved. Does it surprise you that we still do not have a vehicle identified? I am shocked, Brian. In a world defined by modern surveillance and doorbell technology, we have doorbell cameras everywhere. A large percentage of the elderly population uses these devices for home security. I am not saying everyone in Catalina Hills is elderly, but many are, and they use active cameras. Many were, so I am genuinely surprised we do not have more information regarding the suspect vehicle. Regarding that white car, you have to analyze the color key and the technology to determine the actual shade. Was it white? Was it beige or light blue? Cameras that see in the dark can easily modify specific colors. Low light sensors change how we perceive paint. I would say a white appearing car, but I am shocked. We have seen nothing. Is there a chance they already have the car but refuse to release the footage? Absolutely. The Bureau often holds back. We see cases where a new piece of evidence is kept under wraps. Evidence flows in, but the FBI will stay silent to protect the integrity of an active federal investigation. Look, we have possessed that intel since day 4 or 5. You are not seeing the director's daily case briefings. The Bureau and law enforcement only ever disclose what is strictly necessary. They are not a media firm. This is an investigative and prosecutive machine, and while managing the media is a requirement, it is handled clinically. They meet the bare minimum standard for updates. When they released those suspect photos, it was purely tactical. Kash Patel pushed them out. It was clear then that the Bureau never shows its hand unless forced. Releasing evidence is never their first choice. I can tell you with absolute authority that this is Bureau protocol. It is not that the Bureau hates the public, and it is not that the agents are being secretive. The FBI wants the public to know everything, but they want it to happen in court, not TV. Every forensic detail and piece of evidence is being preserved for trial. They are not hiding the truth here. They are building an airtight legal case where the public has an absolute right to see every fact presented. We live in a country with public trials, but the investigations leading up to them must remain strictly confidential. Public trials exist. Public investigations do not. This distinction reveals their tactical posture better than a press release. They are not confused. They are not spinning their wheels. This framing is absolutely essential. Forget the press releases. They reveal the Bureau's true posture better than any official statement could. They are not confused or spinning their wheels. They are preparing a case that will eventually be heard before a jury. Every decision made right now is calculated for that courtroom moment. The Pima County Sheriff remains active in their investigation. It will continue until Nancy Guthrie is located or every single lead has been completely exhausted. Nearly 40,000 public tips have been received. The reward currently stands at exactly $1.1 million. $1 million comes from the Guthrie family and $100,000 from the Bureau. DNA is now at Quantico. The evidence is moving through advanced forensic testing that did not exist years ago. Nancy Guthrie remains missing. It is day 87. Nancy Guthrie has not been located. No suspects named. No motive confirmed on record. The investigation is active across multiple agencies, including the Pima County Sheriff, the Bureau, and Customs and Border Protection. The Bureau, Customs and Border Protection, and federal prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Tucson are involved. Their office is handling the trial for Derek Kella, the man charged with sending those fraudulent ransom texts. The trial begins June 23rd in Tucson Federal Court. This case is separate from the abduction itself. It highlights how this disappearance draws people in, even those who have absolutely nothing to do with the crime. The real case involves a masked suspect on a doorbell camera, blood on a front porch, and a pacemaker. It went silent at 2:28 a.m. DNA now sits in the most advanced forensic labs in the country. That case is moving. Sheriff Nanos told investigators early on that he believed he knew the motive for this. He has kept that information locked down, away from everyone. That silence is a strategic protection of the case. Holding that information back is either a strategic move or a massive consequential gamble. Perhaps it is both. We are left with this on day 87. A message hit a Bitcoin wallet on February 10th. Someone said they were ready. Then, the other side went quiet. In that silence, investigators have been working. The FBI is doing what it always does before prosecution. Building, testing, and waiting for evidence to align. They are waiting for the forensic picture to become clear enough to act. That moment has not arrived yet. But the DNA is at Quantico. The trial case is being meticulously prepared by the agents closest to it. Somewhere between that February 10th message and the lab results being processed, the answer to this disappearance already exists. The truth has simply not been authorized for release yet. That is the part that stays with you. Not the unanswered questions about suspects or motives. Those questions will eventually have answers forced out by investigators. What sits with you is the silence itself, because that silence belongs to someone who knows the truth. Someone knows exactly what happened in that house between 1:47 and 2:28 a.m. Someone has watched this case for 87 days while staying silent. Unresolved cases do not stay that way. Evidence degrades, but it never disappears. People talk, mistakes surface. This FBI preparation is not for nothing. FBI preparation of this magnitude only happens when the Bureau is ready to strike. You do not build this when you have nothing. When that moment comes, we will be here. If this episode gave you a new perspective, please subscribe for updates. Identify a connection or a missed forensic detail, log your findings below, and explain exactly what you think happened. Subscribe to American Case File and track the final hours before everything shattered for good.